Pittsburgh, where I lived for 40 years about, it's the sort of place where people brag about their conscience being for sale. So it's not really surprising that when George Romero and his associates planted what they show to be a valuable script on a little boy who a lot of people beat up very terribly, to put it mildly, that the Pittsburgh public schools, who are criminally negligent in this ordeal, would cover for it and justify it as a squabble over copyright. And the police and the governor's office would sign their names to it as though it's an unremarkable act of show business to molest and torment a child in a public school. It was all acted out with guerrilla theater. They carried 6-foot tubes and threw nitroglycerin in my mouth. They had names like Ronnie and Casper, Ronald and Casper in 1972. They made themselves known. And my ear doctor was a Holocaust survivor, and I was gassed. I mean, the name indicators show that it was guerrilla theater of a intricate sort from the Veterans Administration. And a child in a Pittsburgh public school was considered to be a utility function, to use the words of James W. Child, an Ohio trooper who was brought in when I divulged some details to Wesley Posvar. He was brought into the University of Pittsburgh on a philosophy fellowship. One of the cold-blooded ways that Carnegie Mellon University, working with Jeffen and Patricia Fripp, through an office known as Alternative Conflict Resolution, whose organizer, Martha Hardy Shawn, made no secret that she and her husband collected revenge stories. She told me some of them. One of them was a woman who used a man's phone to call time in international time zone, far away, and left the phone off the hook, and it just kept repeating and running up a tab. That's the sort of people who are offering this nebulous explanation that comes from Ming-Na Wen and Oliver Stone, that they found the script and decided to play act it for its most nefarious aspects, that they didn't write the script or originate it. In fact, the details that were found in the script so closely matched the details that they had conjured in guerrilla theater and drama school that they decided the script was irrelevant, that the real issue was the play acting that was going on in the neighborhood. And that amounted to the storyline that they were punishing the man who could have saved John Lennon, the kid who could have saved John Lennon, with AIDS for rape. So that's what John Schulman, Peter Gabriel, Robert Fripp, Amanda Harcourt, Yoko Ono all put their money on, the ticket on, for the Green Party with the Palace's brokers of Paul McCartney's will. And even though Peter Gabriel sang in his record about this, one of the two records he put out about this, judge and jury in my head He was obviously a ventriloquist for Donald Trump, who believes he is law over the Supreme Court. Just stand aside while the judge and jury and the heads of the imperial desk make good on their Hollywood mirage. And by what miracle is this considered convincing? The behavior of Leslie Katz and the psychological warfare that she waged on me was documented in my letter of complaint to her. It meant none of the things that Robert Fripp pretended it meant. And they set up a sexual espionage system of memory identification because they were going to interrogate an implanted neuroplasm through brainwave investigation. They got a Yammer and Senegalese to trigger seizures. And while I was in convulsions, they were asking me questions that they demanded I say with the first thing that came to my mind, which were also ventriloquistic implants. Soundtracks, things that I had been forced to listen to as a child and hostage. And they didn't respond to the fact that this was obviously the fact of the matter. What they did was they cut and pasted into a story, a fable, that matched the script and said, the origins of it are things that are going on in the neighborhood, not the fact that it matches the script. The script is irrelevant. And it's not real. So when they blew up the Jackson Labs, burned down the Jackson Labs, that wasn't real. Lost $10 million. That wasn't real either. When they made Rod Creary's son of senior faculty deaf as a child, that wasn't real. When Kid Crimson's art was used to induce a Manson-esque trauma, that wasn't real. When adults kidnapped me and used me for sex as a comatose, barely conscious, battered child, that wasn't real either. When I went to the principal's office and pleaded with them to help me because my life was in danger, and then disappeared for a month, and they didn't even call, see where I was, they didn't call police or report it, that wasn't real. When I was hiding in the towel closet, that was proof that I was delusional, that I believed someone was going to hurt me. That's what Seattle wrote on a piece of official psychiatric paper. The queer ball, or see, they didn't call it queer ball, they said the patient believes that he was kidnapped and tortured as a child. And you can go to 1228 Winterton Street and check upstairs. There's room for a child on the top shelf of the towel closet. How would I know if I didn't crawl up there? The area of Tacoma that is loyal to this situation call me obsessive because they pry into my computer and I have some hotties, pictures of hotties. They gave me Parkinson's. Seattle castrated me. They played pussy ball in Pittsburgh. The evidence shows that their gang organization murdered my father. I don't trust my father now that I know what the situation is. He used to say things like, let's not say we did, which is a little bit too canny. I know that he met with the Beatles in an underground pub before their rise. It wasn't the wasn't the one they're usually associated with. It was a different one. And let's not say we did is a little too canny. It's a little too like Gail Burston's comment, is not was. I say is not was. It's a little bit too close, proximate. He was from the same ship as Bush in the Navy. So, and humanizing the school means I'm child of a humanist, so I'm an abortion, right? So they make me deaf because I can't hear the silent scream. and imprint me with King Crimson's screaming record, and then say that I'm guilty because I wasn't a child soldier. And it turns out Yoko Ono has been casing me through the whole terrible crime. Her organization, her swastika pornography genocide corporation, NEVA, has their name on the whole script. In fact, Gail Burston, whose likeness appears on a 1979 cover from Robert Fripp, they claim Lennon. They said that's not and say we did. They say he did was done in 1980. What's she doing on a 1979 record, or why didn't they investigate her? Gail Burston wrote, "Oh no, Fang looming," and one particularly very scary letter I got recuperating from trauma. But she always said, "I love you, man," like Peter Sinfield used to say to me. And she was from a family's circuit who were magistrates and Jewish, and so above question. The origins of the neuroplasm were from the 70s. And they said that it was funny that they could get the tea kettle to go off, meaning have me screaming and seizures and suffering, by tricking me with illusions, by having me grasp the phantom planet of their Mirage game, that they just happened to have all stored up in their Scorsese Hollywood magic with Woody Allen, publishing me in Sinise Film Quarterly. And I warned City of Pittsburgh publicly. These are Jews from Israel getting revenge for Auschwitz in a newspaper at Carnegie Mellon University in 1994. And everybody zipped their lips and said, "Ha, ha, ha, ha. We laugh at you with Peter Gabriel because we're going to torture the man who could have saved John Lennon to death." And this was considered totally unremarkable by Mellon Bank, by the Heinz Museum, by Fulton Elementary School, by Ann Mitchell, by Peter Gabriel, by George Galloway, by Abby Martin, by Owen Jones. Totally unremarkable. They didn't think a thing about it. They said, "Heil Clint Eastwood. We will do what Herman Simon says." All of them did. None of them intervened or tried to question what had happened. And Robert Fripp said, "I'll give you Lou Gehrig's disease if you laugh at me about dropping my pick." They're crookedly deviant, and they can't straighten themselves out in the least. If I go to a psychologist to come and discuss these things, it goes in one ear and out the other. I write to the Tacoma News Review about it. They never respond. And I'd sit here with my paperwork showing that this whole thing dates to the Italian Futurists of 1907, 1916, 1919. The counterfeiters of the Italian Futurist mobocracy who were introducing Mussolini to D.W. Griffith of Hollywood. The good old days of the birth of the nation. And the whole thing was scripted. And this Hollywood script was disguised as love letters from a 12-year-old Jewish girl whose compatriot was given working papers endorsed by Zappa and Hustler, by the Pittsburgh Labor Union, for the purposes of trafficking a battered tortured, traumatized, deaf elementary school child. And the wizards of the oligarchy, people with loyalty to Sergei Eisenstein in Moscow, say it's a perfectly normal copyright struggle between favored entities in show business, and the show must go on. And I'm going to make one thing very clear. If you stand with the Beatles, that's what you stand for. If they're trying to save John Lennon's image this way, it leaves a lot to be desired.